So let's talk about Star Wars. I've been thinking about it a lot recently, really ruminating on the subject. And a lot of what I hear from people, and I went to the movie myself, and I remember when I walked out, it was kind of a surreal, tingly sensation. You know, it always is a bit jolting to watch a movie. I think they designed the size of the screen and the surround sound and all of that to kind of suck your mind out of its little body prison and into another world. And, you know, that's always a very disorienting feeling. But I don't remember that kind of intoxication that Star Wars could often deliver. And I do think it's worth asking ourselves why Star Wars can be an intoxicating experience. Now, we can look back all the way to the original series about what it was that George Lucas was trying to deliver. And the artistic process is always quite convoluted. There's always a process of throwing out idea after idea after idea, looking for a feeling. Like the artist knows they're climbing some peak, and at the top of the peak is this marvelous, intoxicating, almost spiritual thing that they're trying to unravel in everyone who dares set their eyes on their film. And George Lucas had a vision, and he hammered away at that vision for a very long time. And he relied very heavily on a few theories for that vision. And one of the theories that he relied upon was the hero's journey theory from a rather contemporary philosopher by the name of Campbell. Let me look up his name real fast. The hero's journey. It was Joseph Campbell's monomyth. And by monomyth, what we're talking about Joseph Campbell researched, much like Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell researched all of the myths of human civilization and attempted to find the common elements of all myths. The idea is there have been trillions and trillions of stories, and yet we remember very few. And we remember a very few of these trillions over a period of centuries, over a period of thousands of years. And the idea is that if there are trillions of stories, and yet we only honor a few for thousands of years, so we honor the ones that we do honor, the 0.001, the exceptional stories that we do honor, we honor for a very specific reason and with great passion. Now, if you're looking at like social planners, if you're looking at people who want to dominate human consciousness, they obviously resent the idea that the human will, the collective human will, chooses certain stories. Because the central planners, you know, those who wish to dominate the human mind, they don't want to be dominated by human nature. They want to dominate human nature. It's this idea that which you do not control controls you. So, how many movies were released since? When did Star Wars come out? Like 1968. Let's see, I'm kind of bad when it comes to specific numbers, but you get the idea. It's like 50 years ago, right? That Star Wars was released. How many movies have come out? How many blockbusters? How many Academy Awards? You can probably think of a couple, right? And probably the ones that you can think of are different than the ones that other people could think of. But Star Wars stands out head and shoulders above most of those movies. And we really need to ask ourselves why. Because there's a lot of good movies that came out between 68 and now, or whenever it came out. Apologies to those of you who are very concerned with dates. I'm not very concerned with numerical dates. So I'm probably triggering the hell out of you. I'm very sorry about that. I hope you understand the point I'm trying to make rather than the specifics. There have been many thousands of movies, and yet Star Wars stands out, and it stands out for a reason. And it stands out probably in part because George Lucas studied the monomyth, and he studied what it was that humans wanted to see in stories. And you have to understand just how radical Star Wars was. And even the very simple light versus dark narrative, the very simple religiosity in the film. A lot of the writers and a lot of the execs and a lot of people in the film industry sneered at this. They thought it would be a children's movie, and they thought it would be a failure. It was kind of a giveaway to Lucas because Lucas had done some legwork for the studio. So the studio was like, yeah, sure, we'll let you fail here. We'll let you learn your lesson on this one. And he didn't learn his lesson. He succeeded extraordinarily so. So, what is the hero's journey? And why did George Lucas encapsulate it, and how well, and what was he trying to say? And all these things. All of these are very important questions. And all of these things are questions that Disney did not sufficiently ask internally. If you look at the Kathleen Kennedy situation, you look at the Force is female, you look at the themes in their most recent movie, The Last Jedi, and you can see exactly what it is that they're trying to do. They want to be bigger than Star Wars. They want to be better than Star Wars. Luke, he had to discover the light. He had to discover the light side of the Force and the Jedi Order and their strictures and their teachings and this great body of knowledge, this opus of light side doctrine that was flawed. It was horribly flawed because good is always horribly flawed. Anything that is good is always teetering on the edge of corruption. The good is it's like a perfect triangle. It's like a perfect circle. You could never draw one. You could never make one yourself, but you aim for it. That's the good. And so Luke, he had to aim for the good. And the Jedi, they aimed for the good. And they failed constantly, just like anyone who is good fails constantly. Anyone who strives for perfection fails constantly, but they get close. And that's important. Trying to be close is so much more important than ever being perfect. It's impossible to be perfect. And Disney, they tore it down. They gave into this kind of myopic fascination with moral gray and the fact that they're, the Jedi, who's that? Burn the books, right? Just the very fact in that movie, the very fact that they burned books, that Yoda called down some lightning to burn books, what a dictatorial thing. It's like, oh, if you read the books, you would be influenced by them, and that's the past, and you have to let go of that. Why? Why do you need to destroy things? Some people could say, I guess, that's the inherent nature of change. Things must be destroyed so that new things can be created from the ashes, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know about thousands of years of meditations on moral philosophy being thrown out the window, being burned to ash. It's so arrogant. Like, what? You you've been alive. Rey's been alive. What? She's a teenager or something. She's 20. She's 16. And, and she doesn't need to meditate on her moral philosophy. She doesn't need to meditate on the epistemological questions of good and evil. She doesn't need to meditate on. She just knows. She's a teenage girl, of course. She knows how to navigate the universe. She knows how to navigate questions of morality which have confounded humans for thousands of years. She just knows this implicitly. Why? Oh, because you have to trust her. Anything, don't you know? Anything she's ever done wrong in her life, that's just because you didn't trust her. You didn't empower her enough. You gotta jack her up, put a bunch of fucking Energizer batteries and strap her in, and she's gonna fucking solve everything. It's kind of gross. It's arrogant, it's gross, it's strange. And I think this is an attitude that Disney has. I think they think that, if you just tear down the hero's journey, if you just tear down what thousands of generations of human development have decided is a pleasing tale about morality and about spirituality and about the wars between the forces of the universe, if you just tear all that down and problematize it and throw a bunch of wrenches into it, that you'll have a good film. And I don't think they understand, like, you can have a perfect symphony and be like, hey, let's do something new. Let's just have the horns play this instead. And just you can wreck it. You can just fuck it up forever. I don't think they understood that sufficiently before they marched into this. There's almost some really saddening, because it just make me feel sad that I remember watching the folly of Luke when he stumbled his way towards Darth Vader for all the right reasons. I remember the folly of Luke as he tried to confront evil, and he wasn't ready. He was the hero of the movie, and he thought, hey, I'm the hero of the movie. I'll run right in. And he just didn't have what it took. And I remember seeing that and feeling chastened and sad and just needing to know what happened to Luke from there. Needing to know. And comparing it now to this thing with Rey, it's like watching one of those kung fu movies where they're doing so many flips in the fight that you don't even believe it's a fight anymore. That's like watching Rey and her BB-8 droid just do little flips and twists and get out of every little situation, no matter how unprepared they ever are. And there's never any comeuppance, and there's never any stumble. And it's just silly. It's absolutely silly. And thinking, when Disney's, when they're burning the books and they're making Luke humiliate himself, it's in the script, and Luke has to suck the teat of an alien and just show just how debased and just how, just how far he had fallen to the audience. And man, I remember there was a commentator, I don't remember which commentator it was, and this is terrible for me to forget it, but he said it was like a bunch of kids having a reunion and having the school, the football captain who had won the Super Bowl or something, and it was kind of washed up. It was like having him, having some kids pay him to eat a bunch of spaghetti sauce, and he gets spaghetti all over himself, and everyone's just kind of like looking at it, like kind of just feeling disgusted and just sad. That's what it felt like watching Luke suck a teat that after he had thrown himself into, you know, truly just chastened himself, harrowed himself, completely recreated himself so that he could become a vehicle of the light. And just from that to that was such a terrible transformation. It was terrible. It just made me so sad. And just to think that Disney, they thought, hey, we'll just humiliate Luke, and it's fine because it's the future, and anyone who talks out against us is sexist because you gotta just you just gotta watch the Mary Sue and you gotta just accept it and just deal with it. And I don't know, it's just like, I think they just think they could just wipe the slate and that it would be a critical hit, and they could dismantle the hero's journey, and they could just turn Star Wars into this kind of veiled anti-Trump message. Because the original series, it's like, oh, it was a big diatribe against America's heavy-handed involvement in Vietnam. It's just effective a diatribe against the Soviet Union's heavy-handedness in Afghanistan. It's a diatribe against the corrupting nature of power. It isn't this single issue. Just like it's like Disney just took a fucking editorial out of the New York Times. Is this some kind of deranged anti-Trump editorial? Be like, oh my god, it's literal Hitler, Gestapo. We gotta fucking have the military depose Trump real fast for the good of the country. It's like some deranged op-ed out of the fucking New York Times, slapped with some fucking Star Wars on it, and it's insulting. It's really patronizing and insulting and gross. And they just thought they could do it. They could just take something everyone loved and just use it as a vehicle to vent their tribalistic frustration. And I don't. That's really fucked up. And I don't know. Like, they say that the community of people who dislike the Star Wars movies on YouTube is very small and very vocal. And I remember I saw this article. It said, the CNN article, it said that Star Wars should not bow to its vocal fans, right? Well, I got a possibility for you all. What if its vocal fans are the ones who are enunciating the problem, they see a problem and they're going, here's a problem, and it needs to be solved immediately because this hurts me. To watch what you're doing, this debasement, this humiliation of something I love. It's terrible. And what if all of the casual fans, what are the people who, they showed up to Star Wars because they knew it's a good time? What if they aren't taking the time because they don't care as much to explain why they felt sick in their stomachs, like some of my friends felt after watching The Last Jedi, that they just felt sick to their stomach as if they'd watched some vile, terrible thing, but they didn't really care enough and they didn't really unravel it in their head to figure it out as to why it made them feel so gross inside. Maybe George Lucas tapped into something. Maybe his story is one of the trillion to pop into the human psyche because he did things right. And what if the gross feeling that everybody has about The Last Jedi is there because Disney did something wrong? And I'm not talking about something wrong subjectively, like you made a bad move, a little misstep. I'm talking about you violated the rhythm of the human spirit. You desecrated a something that was in key, something that was harmonized, something that was aligned with the rhythms of our species, and you twisted it and made it into something disgusting. Something that, the kind of movie that everyone forgets about a year later because it is not in line with our nature. Because we cannot truly lose ourselves in it as an experience because it is not part of us. It is some false, artificial thing. Some forces female, some kind of painted over I'm with her thing that just no one wanted. Not even the leftists. Like a lot of the guys I went to see this movie, who felt really strange after this movie, they were leftists. Do you think they like this hysteria? Do you think they like this political climate? You think that's why they went to see Star Wars? Do you think they went there to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be told again that our country is ideologically split and that I should hate my neighbor? That's what I want. Do you think that's what they... What a terrible thing that happened. What a terrible, terrible mistake. And I think we can all see a little deeper into ourselves because of this. We can all see a little deeper into this mess. And that's a good thing, I suppose. But they ripped many things from the canon that fans and the authors of the extended universe, who themselves are probably extremely vibrant fans, who searched their souls and found things that harmonized with Star Wars and found things that furthered that vision in a beautiful way. Characters like Revan and Mary Jane, I believe. What was her name? Was it Mary Jane, Luke's girlfriend? Let's check. Mary. I know it's Mary. Here. Mara. I'm so sorry. Mara Jade. Yet these characters that people loved, and there's websites about them, and that isn't an accident. There were many extended universe things, and there were a few characters that became iconic because they fit. Because of the same shit I've been talking about this whole video. Because they harmonized. And Disney threw it all away for I don't know. I don't know what... I don't know what Rey is supposed to be. A hero is supposed to be instructive to us, to the people. We're supposed to read about the tales of heroes fighting great odds and slaying monsters. We're supposed to hear about these tales in order to learn instructive lessons. What has Rey learned? Not to trust her elders, not to read books, to burn them instead. What has she learned? That the hot bad boy is gonna telepathically communicate with her? That she'll beat creatures? Well, what are they called? The Imperial Guard, and they're specifically drawn... They're the Crimson Guard, and they're specifically drawn from one species of alien. What are they called? They're drawn from a certain species, and they're all they all have white hair, and they're all They're completely dedicated to combat. Completely. Ah, Echani, yes, from Knights of the Old Republic. So that's one of the things that Ray learned. She learned that the Echani are a species of alien that specifically revolve their entire culture and their entire existence as aliens revolves around fighting. Like they'll fight with their friends in order to communicate with each other, in order to have like a dialogue. They'll spar and they'll fight each other in order to gain insight. It's how they mate. They'll fight, and the man will fight a woman and will learn about her, and she will learn about him. And the fight is part of the fight to submission. It's about the romance itself, expressed through combat. And there's an entire room full of these Imperial Guards, of these Echani. And the Imperial Guards are all Echani, and they're all drawn from the best warriors of the Echani. And Rey learned that 2 days of lightsaber training and protagonist status is enough to beat a room full of professional Echani warriors. Professional warriors. Rey was a scaver. She would just pull bits of electric shit out of wrecked Imperial ships, and now she's going and fighting the best warriors in the galaxy, the best like non-super force user warriors, and just demolishing them. And where did this come from? And what is the viewer supposed to learn here? Oh, here's the most insurmountable, the most well-trained combat enthusiasts on the planet, and you should just run headlong into them like Rey, and that'll go fine. When Luke got his hand cut off, we learned something that was instructive. When Luke tried to show love to his father in the final movie, in the Return of the Jedi, we learned something. What are we learning from this Rey thing? I don't know. It's just some weird propaganda. The only thing that I'm learning is that I just need to submit to whatever power is behind Rey. It just can't be stopped. And if I and the only thing I'm learning is the omnipotence of the character, and that's I just have to bow down to it, I guess. It just makes me feel kind of sick, kind of sad, and just like I'm not watching a fucking movie, to be honest.